The bitter wind howled across the frozen landscape, sweeping up snow in swirling eddies that danced under the pale light of distant stars. She pulled the tattered remnants of her cloak tighter around her lithe, trembling frame. Each step was a battle against the biting cold that seemed intent on sapping the last remnants of her strength. Her silver-blue skin, now marred by frostbite, shimmered faintly under the moonlight, a haunting reminder of her once radiant beauty. 4 days she had wandered, each one colder and more brutal than the last. Her once keen hunting skills, honed to perfection over countless seasons on her home planet, were of little use in this alien terrain. Here, the prey was elusive, the land unforgiving. Hunger gnawed at her insides, a relentless companion that had turned her graceful movements into a staggering, desperate march. In the distance, through the haze of snow, she spotted a faint glimmer of hope, smoke rising from a chimney, curling lazily into the frigid air. With renewed vigor, she pushed forward, her mind clinging to the promise of warmth and sustenance. As she drew closer, the outline of a small wooden cabin became clear, its walls sturdy and inviting against the winter's assault. She stumbled to the door, her strength waning with each passing moment. Raising a trembling hand, she knocked, the sound barely audible above the howling wind. For a moment, there was only silence, and despair threatened to consume her. Then, the door creaked open, revealing a man standing in the threshold. He was tall, his frame broad and solid, like the mountains that loomed in the distance. His rugged features spoke of a life spent battling the elements, and his piercing gaze softened as it settled upon her. Without a word, he stepped aside, allowing her to enter the warmth of the cabin. The heat was a balm to her frozen body, and she sank onto a nearby chair, her legs giving out beneath her. The man closed the door against the cold and moved swiftly, stoking the fire until it roared with life. He returned with a thick blanket, draping it gently over her shoulders. She clutched it tightly, her shivering slowly subsiding. "You're lucky I heard your knock," he said, his voice deep and steady. "A night like this could be your last out there." She nodded, her throat too dry and sore to form words. He disappeared into another room and returned moments later with a steaming bowl of soup. The aroma was intoxicating, and she accepted it with trembling hands. Each spoonful was a revelation, the warmth spreading through her body and chasing away the cold. As she ate, he watched her, curiosity etched into his features. "You're not from around here, are you?" he asked, though it was more of a statement than a question. She shook her head. "No," she managed to croak, her voice raspy. "Far from here." He nodded, seeming to understand without needing further explanation. "Well, you're safe now. You can stay as long as you need." Gratitude welled up within her, and she found herself fighting back tears. It had been so long since she had encountered kindness, so long since she had felt anything but the harsh indifference of the wilderness. Days passed, and she began to recover. The man, whose name she learned was John, was a quiet but attentive host. He provided her with clothing and food, teaching her how to navigate this new world. In return, she shared her stories, tales of a distant planet where the skies shimmered with colors unseen by human eyes, and creatures of unimaginable beauty roamed freely. Despite their differences, an unspoken bond formed between them. John was a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. He built her a small room of her own within the cabin, a space where she could find solace and healing. He taught her the ways of the land, showing her how to hunt and gather in this harsh environment. As winter's grip loosened, they ventured out together, exploring the vast wilderness. She marveled at the resilience of the human spirit, the way John faced each challenge with determination and quiet strength. He, in turn, was captivated by her otherworldly grace and the wisdom she carried from her home world. One evening, as they sat by the fire, the cabin filled with the warmth of flickering flames, she turned to John with a question that had been weighing on her heart. "Why did you help me?" He looked at her, his gaze steady and thoughtful. "Because you needed it," he said simply. "And because no one deserves to face this world alone." Her heart swelled with emotion, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of belonging. Though they came from different worlds, they had found each other in the vastness of the universe, two souls seeking refuge from the cold. As the seasons changed, so did their lives. Together, they carved out a new existence, blending their skills and knowledge to thrive in the wilderness. The cabin became a sanctuary, a place where two unlikely companions could find peace and purpose. And so, under the endless sky, their story continued, a testament to the power of compassion and the resilience of the human and alien spirit. The days grew warmer, and the endless white of the winter landscape began to thaw. However, with the changing seasons came new challenges, some unexpected and others far more dangerous than the cold. One evening, as the sky stretched into twilight, an eerie howl pierced the stillness of the woods. It was a sound neither human nor familiar, something primal and wild. John stood at the door, his expression hardening. "You should stay inside," he said, his voice edged with caution. "There's something out there. It's not the usual predators." She looked at him, a shiver not from the cold running through her. "What is it?" John didn't answer immediately. His eyes scanned the woods, narrowing. "We'll find out soon enough." She followed him to the window. Through the growing darkness, she saw nothing but shadows, but the howls continued, each one closer than the last. The air seemed to hum with a tension that made her hairs stand on end. She could sense that John was worried, something he hadn't shown since the first time she arrived at the cabin. Suddenly, there was a sharp knock at the door. John froze, his body going still like a predator sensing danger. His hand reached for the rifle he kept by the door, though he didn't raise it yet. The knock came again, this time louder, more insistent. Without waiting for John's permission, she opened the door. Standing in the threshold was a figure wrapped in furs, its face obscured by a hood. Beneath the fur, something shimmered, a glint of metal that didn't belong to any ordinary human. "I need shelter," the figure said, its voice muffled by the cold. John was quick to respond, stepping forward and blocking the doorway. "You're not welcome here." "Not with the danger out there," he warned, his tone low and urgent. The figure didn't move, but its posture shifted, as if assessing the situation. "You don't understand. I am not from here, and neither are you. I was sent to find you." The words sent a chill deeper than the wind outside. The man turned to the woman, his eyes filled with a mixture of suspicion and fear. "What does it mean?" The figure spoke again, this time removing its hood. What she saw was not human. Its face was elongated, with skin a deep shade of emerald, the eyes wide and glowing faintly under the moonlight. It wasn't an alien from her world, but something else entirely. "We were once kin," the figure said, its eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her heart race. "But that was before the war. The war you've been hiding from. The one your people started." She gasped, stepping back. "What? My people?" "They did not forget you," the figure interrupted, stepping forward as if to make the truth clearer. "They sent me to find you, to bring you back to your true purpose." John looked between the two of them, confusion and mistrust written all over his face. "What is this? What is she?" The figure's gaze shifted to him, its voice suddenly colder. "She is not what you think. She was one of them. A weapon designed to conquer. But she was abandoned here, left to survive in a world not her own. Her people never intended for her to remain human." The words hit her like a blow. Her mind reeled, struggling to understand what this being was saying. She had been raised as a warrior, yes, but to hear that she was a weapon meant for war, abandoned, and left to live as something she wasn't supposed to be, was a devastating revelation. John's voice cut through the tension. "Are you threatening her?" The figure's lips twisted into something that could almost be mistaken for a smile. "No. I'm here to offer her a choice. She doesn't belong with you, human. You have no idea what she's capable of. But I can offer her redemption. If she returns with me." The room fell silent. John's hand slowly moved to the rifle again, but this time the figure didn't move. Instead, the being looked at her with a strange mix of sorrow and anticipation, waiting for her decision. Her mind was a whirlpool, confusion, fear, and betrayal battling each other. She was a weapon. Her very existence had been meant to end lives, to destroy. But here, on this distant world, she had found peace. She had found something she never thought possible: love, kindness, humanity. But now, faced with the cold reality of who she was and the destiny that awaited her, she had to choose: to return to her people, to fulfill the role they had planned for her, or to stay here and risk losing everything that had come to define her new life. She turned to John, his eyes full of concern, but also something else, something deeper. He was afraid. Afraid that she would leave. Afraid that the person he had come to care for might vanish, taken by forces neither of them could control. "You don't have to go," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But she knew the truth now. Her people would never let her live as she was. She had been a tool of destruction, a force of nature they would not simply allow to fade away. She had to face them. She had to confront who she was, and perhaps, for once, find a way to control the power within her. But could she? And what would be left for her if she chose to return? The figure took a step back, its eyes now glowing with something darker, more urgent. "Time is running out. They will come for you. They will not wait forever." John stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Whatever you choose, you won't be alone. Not anymore." Torn between two worlds, she made her decision, her heart pounding in her chest as the winds outside howled louder, as though the world itself was holding its breath. She stood there, caught between two impossible choices, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The alien figure's glowing eyes bore into her, a silent reminder of the life she once lived, the war she was meant to fight. On the other side, John's presence was steady and grounding, a beacon of the life she had come to cherish on this cold, distant world. Taking a deep breath, she found her voice, though it trembled. "I need answers," she said, her gaze shifting between the two. "But I won't leave like this. If I'm to confront my past, I need to understand it fully. I need time." The figure tilted its head, considering her words. "Time is a luxury your people will not afford you. But I can grant you some, if you promise to come when I return." She nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at her. "I promise." The figure seemed satisfied, stepping back into the snow. "Very well. I will return when the stars align again. Be ready." With that, it turned and disappeared into the night, leaving only the faint imprint of its steps in the snow. The tension in the air lingered even after it was gone, as if the very fabric of the world had shifted. John closed the door, turning to her with concern etched into his features. "What does this mean? What are you going to do?" She sank into the chair by the fire, the warmth doing little to thaw the chill that had settled in her bones. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've spent so long running from who I was. But now, it's all coming back, and I have to face it." John knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. "You don't have to face it alone. We'll figure this out together." His words were a comfort, but she knew this path was one she had to walk alone, at least in part. The truth of her origin, the purpose for which she had been created, was something only she could reconcile. Days passed, each one filled with a mix of preparation and introspection. She trained with John, honing her skills not just for survival but for the confrontation she knew was inevitable. The bond between them grew stronger, yet the looming shadow of her past threatened to cast a pall over their newfound life. Then, one night, as they sat under the stars, she turned to John, her resolve hardened. "When the figure returns, I'll go with them." John's jaw clenched, but he nodded. "I figured you would. But I'm coming too." Her eyes widened. "John, it's too dangerous. This is my fight." He shook his head, his gaze unwavering. "If you go, I go. I'm not letting you face this alone." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't argue. In her heart, she knew he wouldn't be swayed. Together, they would face whatever lay ahead. When the figure returned, as promised, they were ready. John stood by her side, his rifle slung across his back, his expression resolute. The figure regarded them both with a mixture of curiosity and something akin to respect. "Very well," it said, gesturing for them to follow. "But be warned, human. This journey will test every fiber of your being. She may survive it, but you—" "I'll take my chances," John interrupted, his voice firm. The journey was long, taking them through forests and across rivers, the landscape changing as if responding to their silent purpose. The figure led them to a ship, sleek and alien, its surface reflecting the starlight in strange patterns. As they boarded, she felt the weight of her decision settle fully upon her. There was no turning back now. The ship ascended into the sky, leaving the world she had come to love behind. John took her hand, grounding her in the moment, reminding her of the strength they shared. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. As the stars stretched out before them, she whispered to John, "Thank you. For everything." He squeezed her hand, his eyes meeting hers. "We'll get through this. Together." And so, they hurtled toward an uncertain future, bound by love and a shared determination to face whatever awaited them in the vast expanse of the universe. The ship hummed with a strange, low vibration as it cut through the fabric of space, carrying them further from the world they knew and deeper into the unknown. The figure, who had introduced itself as Rael, piloted the vessel with an ease that spoke of long familiarity with the stars. Neither John nor she had spoken much since they departed, both lost in their thoughts about what lay ahead. As the hours stretched on, Rael finally broke the silence. "We'll be arriving soon at the outpost. There, you will learn what your people have been planning. You'll see why they need you back." She felt a chill at Rael's words, a reminder of the destiny she had been trying to avoid. "And if I refuse?" she asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Rael's glowing eyes flicked toward her. "Refusal is not an option they will accept easily. They see you as the key to their victory. They will stop at nothing to reclaim you." John shifted beside her, his expression hardening. "Then we'll just have to convince them otherwise." Rael's lips curled into a faint, almost pitying smile. "I admire your confidence, human. But you have no idea the forces you're up against." The rest of the journey was silent, tension thick in the confined space of the ship. She found herself grappling with memories long buried, training sessions, missions, the war that had shaped her existence. Yet, she also thought of John, of the life they had built, and the hope that perhaps, just perhaps, she could forge a different path. The ship slowed, and the view outside shifted. A massive structure loomed into view, a fortress of metal and stone suspended in the void of space. Lights flickered across its surface, and the sheer scale of it was enough to make John mutter under his breath. "Welcome to the Nexus," Rael said, a note of pride in his voice. "The heart of our command, and soon to be your battleground." The ship docked smoothly, and as the doors opened, a contingent of armed guards awaited them. Their armor gleamed under the artificial lights, their faces obscured by helmets. Rael gestured for them to follow, and with a last glance at John, she stepped forward, her heart pounding. They were led through winding corridors, the architecture stark and intimidating. Finally, they entered a large chamber dominated by a circular table around which several figures were seated. Their attention snapped to her the moment she entered. "Ah, our lost warrior returns," one of them said, his voice cold and calculating. "You've been gone a long time, but we have kept your place ready. You have much to answer for." She straightened her spine, her voice firm. "I didn't come to answer to you. I came to understand why you've been hunting me." The figure, evidently a leader, rose from his seat, towering over the others. "Because you are more than just a warrior. You are the catalyst, the one who can end this war in our favor. We designed you for this purpose." John stepped forward, his voice sharp. "She's not just a weapon for you to use. She's more than that." The leader's gaze flicked to John, a sneer curling his lips. "And you are a mere human, out of your depth. This is not your concern." "It is my concern," John shot back, standing his ground. "She chose a different life, one that doesn't involve your war." The room grew tense, the air crackling with unspoken threats. Rael watched with a neutral expression, neither intervening nor supporting either side. It was clear this confrontation had been anticipated. "You cannot deny what you are," the leader said, turning back to her. "Your blood, your very essence, is tied to our victory. Without you, our chances diminish. With you, we are unstoppable." She felt the weight of their expectations, the crushing pressure of their plans. Yet, she also felt John's presence beside her, a reminder that she had the power to choose. Taking a deep breath, she met the leader's gaze head-on. "I am not your weapon," she declared. "I am more than what you made me. I will not be used to destroy." The leader's eyes narrowed, his demeanor shifting from commanding to threatening. "Then you leave us no choice." The guards around the room tensed, ready to act, but John moved before they could, drawing his weapon with a speed that surprised even Rael. "Don't even think about it," he warned, his voice cold as steel. Rael finally spoke, his tone measured. "Perhaps we should reconsider our approach. If she refuses, forcing her will only drive her further away. Let us hear what she proposes." The leader's jaw clenched, but he waved the guards back. "Very well. Speak. What would you have us do?" She took a step forward, her mind racing. "I will help, but not as your weapon. I'll mediate. We find a way to end this war without more bloodshed. We use diplomacy, strategy, not brute force." A murmur spread through the room, disbelief mingled with intrigue. The leader crossed his arms, watching her intently. "And if we agree, what guarantees do we have that you won't betray us?" John answered for her, his voice steady. "You have my word. And if that's not enough, we'll make sure you see the value in peace." The leader considered this, the tension slowly easing from his frame. "Very well. You have one chance to prove your worth. But be warned, if you fail, there will be no mercy." The stage was set, the stakes higher than ever. She had bought them time, but now, she had to find a way to navigate the delicate balance between her past and the future she wanted to build. The room buzzed with uneasy energy as the leaders dispersed, leaving her and John momentarily alone with Rael. The alien figure, who had been watching the exchange with an inscrutable expression, finally spoke. "You've taken a bold path," Rael said, his tone neither approving nor condemning. "Mediation is not what they expected from you." She turned to face him, her resolve hardening. "It's the only way this ends without more death. I won't be their weapon." John stepped closer, his gaze fixed on Rael. "And what about you? Where do you stand in all this?" Rael's eyes narrowed slightly, considering the question. "I am a servant of my people. My duty is to ensure our survival. If diplomacy can achieve that, I will support it. But make no mistake. Many here would prefer the simplicity of war. Then we'll have to show them another way," she said, her voice steady despite the uncertainty that gnawed at her. Rael nodded. "I will assist you. But be prepared. Not everyone will be so accommodating." They left the chamber, the weight of their mission pressing heavily on their shoulders. Rael led them through the labyrinthine corridors of the Nexus, explaining the political landscape they were about to navigate. The factions within their society were divided, some eager for peace, others entrenched in the desire for domination. "We'll need allies," Rael said, pausing in front of a large door. "There are those who have grown weary of endless conflict. They will listen, but you must convince them that peace is not only possible but preferable." She exchanged a glance with John, his face set with determination. "Then let's meet them." The door slid open to reveal a vast hall filled with figures from different walks of life. Scholars, warriors, diplomats. Conversations hushed as they entered, all eyes turning toward the newcomers. It was a council of influence, those who could sway the tides of their society. Rael stepped forward, addressing the assembly. "You have heard of her return. She stands here now, not as a weapon, but as a voice for peace. Hear her out." She took a deep breath and began to speak, her words carrying the weight of her convictions. She spoke of the endless cycles of war, the lives lost, and the potential for a future where conflict could be resolved through dialogue rather than destruction. She shared her own journey, the realization that there was more to existence than being a tool of war. The room was silent as she finished, the weight of her words sinking in. Then, a murmur spread, some nodding in agreement, others whispering doubts. A tall figure, clearly a veteran of many battles, stood, his voice booming across the hall. "Words are fine, but how do we trust them? How do we trust you, after all you've done?" John stepped forward, his voice firm. "You trust her because she's here, risking everything to change the course. And you trust her because she's not alone in this." Another voice, softer but no less powerful, rose from the crowd. "And if we choose this path, What happens when the enemy doesn't honor the peace? She answered calmly. Then we show them that peace is the stronger path. We use every means at our disposal to ensure it holds, but we don't start by assuming failure. We start by believing it can work. The debates continued, the room splitting into factions as arguments for and against a proposal were laid bare. Yet, as the hours wore on, a fragile consensus began to emerge. They would give her plan a chance, but under strict conditions. They would need proof of the enemy's willingness to negotiate. We will send envoys, one of the diplomats declared. If they agree to talks, we will proceed. But if they refuse... If they refuse, she interrupted, then we haven't lost anything by trying. But we must try. The assembly adjourned, the path forward clearer but fraught with peril. She and John left the hall, their hearts heavy but hopeful. They had taken the first step, but many more lay ahead. Rael joined them in the corridor, his expression unreadable. You've bought some time, but the next step will be even harder. We'll be ready, John said, his voice resolute. Good, Rael replied, his gaze shifting to her. Because the enemy is already aware of your return. And they will not wait for you to make the first move. As the days passed, the preparations for the negotiations intensified. Messages were sent to the enemy forces, carefully worded to propose a ceasefire and peace talks. Rael worked closely with them, his knowledge of both sides invaluable in crafting a message that could not easily be dismissed. The response, when it came, was cautiously optimistic. The enemy leadership agreed to meet, but with heavy security on both sides, a reminder of the deep mistrust that still lingered. The day of the negotiations arrived, and the tension in the air was palpable. They gathered in a neutral zone, a stark, desolate planet chosen for its lack of strategic value to either side. She and John, along with Rael and a small delegation, stood at the edge of the meeting place, watching as the enemy's ships descended. As the enemy leaders emerged, she felt a wave of recognition. These were her former comrades, faces she hadn't seen in years but remembered with a clarity that surprised her. They looked older, wearier, the war having taken its toll on them as much as it had on her. The leader of the enemy delegation, a tall, imposing figure with piercing eyes, stepped forward. His gaze locked onto hers, a mixture of surprise and something deeper flickering across his face. You've changed, he said, his voice a blend of curiosity and skepticism. So have you, she replied, holding his gaze. We all have. And that's why we're here. To end this, once and for all. The negotiations began, the initial hours fraught with accusations and counter-accusations. Yet, as they delved deeper into the reasons for the war, the common ground began to emerge. Both sides were exhausted, their resources depleted, their people yearning for peace. John played a crucial role, his outsider perspective offering solutions neither side had considered. His simple yet profound suggestions helped bridge the gap, turning the conversation from one of hostility to one of possibility. Days turned into a week, and by the end, an agreement was reached. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a framework for peace that both sides could build upon. There were concessions, compromises, and a shared commitment to lay down arms and work toward rebuilding what had been lost. As the delegations shook hands, she felt a wave of relief wash over her. They had done it. Against all odds, they had taken the first step toward a better future. Back at the Nexus, the news spread quickly. The war was over, at least for now. Celebrations were muted, tinged with the sorrow of the losses endured, but there was hope, a fragile hope that perhaps this time, peace would hold. Rael approached her and John as they stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. You've done something remarkable, he said, his tone softer than usual. You've given us a chance. She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. We did it together. And now, we all have a chance to heal. John wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. And what about us? Where do we go from here? She turned to him, her heart full. Anywhere we want. The universe is wide, and we've earned the right to explore it, together. Rael nodded. You'll always have a place here. But I suspect you two are destined for adventures beyond our stars. With that, he left them alone, giving them space to contemplate their future. They stood in silence for a while, the weight of their journey finally lifting. John broke the silence, his voice gentle. "We made it." She leaned into him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "We did. And now, we start a new chapter." As they gazed out at the endless expanse of space, the possibilities were infinite. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, together. Now, they would chart their own course, one step at a time, with love as their guide. And for the first time in a long while, she felt truly free. She took a deep breath, feeling the truth of those words. "And love," she said softly, "love gives us the strength to change, to forgive, and to build a better world. It's the most powerful force in the universe." Rael's words echoed in her mind, a reminder of another truth they had learned. Unity comes not from erasing our uniqueness, but from embracing it and working together toward a shared future. John added, "Trust is fragile but necessary. It has to be nurtured, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Without trust, there can be no lasting peace." She took a deep breath, feeling the truth of those words. "And love," she said softly, "love gives us the strength to change, to forgive, and to build a better world. It's the most powerful force in the universe." John smiled, pulling her closer. "Then let's build that world, one step at a time. Together." As they turned to leave the observation deck, the stars still glittering like a promise of endless possibilities, they carried with them the lessons learned. The courage to choose peace over war, the importance of trust and unity, the power of understanding and compassion, and above all, the strength of love to heal and guide. And with those lessons, they were ready to face whatever came next, knowing that together, they could overcome anything.